A&M. One regular season loss. They had regression level good luck last year. We'll see if that kind of happens here. The thing is that win over Notre Dame was a good luck win, and also considering how much Notre Dame improved over the last 9 games of the season, that performance against Notre Dame just got levered up and up as Notre Dame got better, since my metrics adjust for strength of opponent. So I think this is a little inflated in terms of who they actually played when they play them. New offensive coordinator, first time OC, which I'm not a fan of, especially if it's an internal hire. Marcel Reed progressed last year, 114 apex to a 124. Now what happens with the new OC, we'll see. They had an extremely offensive, by my metrics, it's very experienced offensive line in 25. Now we have a very inexperienced offensive line, very low improvement metric and returning starts metric. The defense needs to step up here. They barely improved last year, even though they had a very high improvement metric. That actually drops this year. And I say this as an Elko fan, but he needs to basically do better on defense here, guys. The conference schedule somehow again is relatively kind, although at the end it gets a little dicey. 8.5, I think, is fairly valued, but boy, I definitely am not taking the over on this team. I have more questions than answers when it comes to A&M. What about you, Graham?
Yeah, I think this, of all the things we talked about last year, I think I picked A&M to make playoff, and that ended up being maybe the best like preseason prediction of any kind that I made for the 2025 season. I am a little bit on the other side of it this year. They do return some snaps like from an experience standpoint, but I hate the double coordinator change. One thing that I found out in my research was they averaged over 10 yards per attempt on throws behind the line of scrimmage in 25 due to KC Concepcion and Marvio Craver. Those guys were really good. They're both gone. I think they made Marcel Reed look really good at times. They do bring some talented guys back, but it's just like those two were really unique in their skill sets. I don't love that you're trying to patchwork together an entire offensive line out of the portal. And some of the guys that they brought in, like Wilkin Formby, I watched him get pushed around a lot playing tackle at Alabama last year. So a little confused there. Top 3 tight ends are gone. They were very good on defense last year. 3rd negative play rate in 2025. Lose both defensive tackles. Like there's a lot of transfer reliance here that I just don't know how it's going to turn out. I got them at 9-3. I think they start 7-1, maybe even 8-0, but then I think they lose at least 2 of Tennessee, Oklahoma, Texas in those final 3 weeks of the season. So like a very classic A&M type season, right? Where things are great and they're probably going to be like top 5, top 7, top 10 in the country because of their record. But I don't know that they'll be that good. The LSU game early, I think, could tell us something. But yeah, I just maybe if the chips fall right and they have the right wins, they maybe 9-3 does make the playoff out of the SEC this year. We'll see. I don't know, but I just don't know that they can repeat the magic of last year.
You first of all, you just take a look at it last year, and boy, you get to borderline playoff already. I'm awesome at just throwing metrics together, but not really marrying them together. And you make a great point about new offensive line and a first-time offensive coordinator. That's a real concern when you had a couple of really nice options at receiver last year too. So yeah, it sounds like we're both reversing from last year. What about you, Robert?
Yeah, Texas A&M was a team I kind of liked last year. I bet them against Notre Dame. That was good, but as the season got on, I was a bit more bearish on this Texas A&M team. Okay, the first 2 weeks they beat UTSA and Utah State. They won those games, but they didn't cover the spread in either of those games. Those were like mid to high 20 spreads, and they didn't cover those spreads. But again, the comfortable wins against those teams. Then Notre Dame, they were I think 6.5 or 7.5 point underdogs. I can't remember exactly which one it was, but they did beat it. They did beat Notre Dame again, technically based off of Tyler Buckner's missed point after attempt. But again, a win, 100% a win, and that was a really good game. 41-40 is really good. But then the next week, they barely scraped by Auburn, a team that fired their coach 16-10. They beat an Arkansas team that also fired their coach by 3. And then they were down 30-0 against South Carolina, and then they come back to win that game 30-1 in the end, basically the end of the game. So that's 3 games that should not have been that close. If you look at their toughest games last year, their toughest games was Notre Dame, Texas, and Miami, and they went 1-2 in those games. And even last year too, it was like the year before they went 10-2 in the regular season, but it was like, oh, okay, we've got 2 tough games, and then they lost both of those games. I think it was Georgia and Texas, if I'm not mistaken. And it was like they won all the games they were supposed to win, but the second they played a good team, they just couldn't get there. And that doesn't necessarily mean you're a bad team, but this year they're just playing way better teams. Arizona State, we love Kenny Dillingham. That's one potentially that they should be fine that game, but depending on what that spread is, there's a certain number of points with Kenny Dillingham you just can't give. At LSU, I think Lane Kiffin's going to be far better last year than Brian Kelly. I think Texas A&M was the team that fired Brian Kelly last year. At Alabama, versus Tennessee, at Oklahoma and Texas. Oklahoma, we think that could potentially be a playoff team. Alabama's a good team too. Texas, we don't know what Texas' situation is going to be, but that's a good team as well. This is the toughest schedule they've had with Mike Elko as head coach by far. And it's weird that a team that has that's lost basically 3 games, 4 games if you include the Miami game, but 3 regular season games in the last 2 years, but all those were to the toughest teams they played, and with the exception of Notre Dame last year. But other than that, it's just this team just after that Notre Dame game, they just really seemed to take their foot off the pedal. There was like a couple of weeks that they just were not the dominant team we had seen earlier in the year, and I think they have lost. Casey Concepcion is a huge loss. Marcel Reed is a pretty good quarterback, but he's not, in my opinion, not one of the elite quarterbacks in the SEC. I don't know. This is a team that I don't love. I don't want to. I never want to. If I'm playing against this team, I don't want to have to play against this team. But at the same point in time, it just seems like every time they're outclassed. I think Mike Elko made a really good team, but I think it's a good team that's really good at beating worse teams. But it just isn't good at beating a team above it as of yet. I think he needed time to build his team out. I think this year he's getting there, but he's not. I don't think he's there yet this year. So 8.5, I think, is completely fairly valued. I could see this team as 9-3. I could see this team with losses to maybe at LSU, maybe at Oklahoma, and maybe Texas or Alabama or something in there. But I don't see this team as a playoff team. Maybe they could squeak in, and I'm sure some other SEC teams will as well. But this is a fringe playoff team for me. This is a much tougher schedule than they had last year, and I think they're going to be a lot more tested than they were last year.
Yeah. Graham, anything else on the Aggies?
No, I think Robert and I kind of see it pretty similarly. Yeah.
Yeah, just boy, last year to your point, from the first, they start the conference with 1, 2, 3, 4 out of their first 5 games are against teams that would fire their coach, and plus Mississippi State. That's a kind draw. Yeah, I think it's a little different this year. All right, Tennessee. Phil says they're going to go with Faison Brandon at quarterback. We'll see. He's a true freshman. I guess he's fighting a redshirt freshman. Don't know if this is good or bad. They didn't add any Ryan through the portal for the second offseason, maybe because they just like how they can develop their own guys. An experienced offensive line. It's year 1 of Jim Knowles, which is it's good for 2027, just to skip ahead here. I'm just going to look at this team for next year. There's just too many unknowns. You got the defense is going to take a year. I believe in Heupel's ability to get quarterbacks ready sooner rather than later, but this is pretty quick for a true freshman. Now, they does have the offensive line, and he has found a way to run the ball too, so maybe they'll exceed my expectations, but I'm not going to take a stance here. I'll just wait on 2027. Wouldn't be surprised if they pull an upset or two, just since that's what they do. What about you, Graham?
I'm bullish on the Vols. I think that the whole premise of the Josh Heupel scheme is basically it's very easy to understand the rules of the system. Sometimes those rules can get them in trouble against top end elite defenses because they're predictable and they're constrained by if the defense does this, then the ball's going there. But we don't have to. That's a whole other conversation. With Faison Brandon, I'm high on the kid. He's a North Carolina kid, and I actually just have family and people I know that are near the area in the high school that he came up in. So I've seen him play a couple times. He's very talented. I think that he will be a good fit for this because he throws a beautiful deep ball with great touch, and that's where Tennessee is gonna live. If he can just give them like he doesn't have to be all world or anything like that, but if he can just be solid and functional, I look at the rest of the offense. I think 8 to 10 starters back. The offensive line pretty much intact. Staley was the SEC Freshman of the Year at wide receiver. Mike Matthews is another one of these long, fast guys on the outside. I don't know who else they got in that room, but usually Heupel just picks his wide receivers, and those are the wide receivers. They don't have a 6, 8 man rotation. I like the tight ends. I like Deshaun Bishop at running back. Defensively, big regression last year. The Knowles thing gives me some pause because usually it takes a couple of years for him to do his install. But he did bring in his middle linebacker from Penn State, and they seem to feel like they're on a good pace with their install. I don't think that they're like all world. I don't think they're going to win the SEC, but I think they get Georgia Tech in week 2. I would not be surprised at all. Neyland Stadium is a really difficult place to play, and if they can get Texas wobbly somehow early in that game and get that crowd into it, I could see that being an upset for Tennessee. I like them more than Auburn. I like them more than Arkansas. I think I like them more than Bama. I like them more than South Carolina. I like them more than Kentucky. And A&M feels like a push a little bit. I got them over the 7.5 for sure. I could see them going 9-3. I could see that kind of world for them. Things fall right. Maybe they get into the playoff hunt. I'm not predicting that, but I think Heupel has been underrated. I don't think he is ever going to create a national title contender with that scheme that he runs and just where Tennessee is as a program right now. That would surprise me. But if I had to pick somebody in the SEC that I trust to not bottom out and to go 8-4, it's him.
Very fair. Good points. You must really like this team in 2027 then, a year two under the quarterback and the defense.
Yeah, for sure. It's so hard now with the portal. It's so hard to get too excited about the future of any program, which sucks. But yeah, Knowles and some of the stuff, some of the guys they've recruited, that running back that they just recruited is insane. They're paying a fortune for him, but he's maybe one of those kind of transcendent Barkley kind of running backs. But yeah, we'll see. 27, they could be good. And Brandon, it'll be interesting. They got the McIntyre kid as well, who's like a 6'6", big arm, kind of classic Tennessee quarterback who has been in the program for a little while. So I think if Faison Brandon wins the job, my prediction here is dependent on the idea that he wins this job and some of his ceiling gets flashed at times. I don't expect him to be perfect, but he's just got enough natural ability to make some of those wow throws at certain points that can kind of swing a game.
Okay. I appreciate the color since this is a blank slate for me. Robert, are you buying the Vols?
Yeah, I mean, I do like them. I don't know exactly how far they'll go. They are like a sleeper playoff team for me, but if you look at the past kind of years, they follow this like tick-tock structure, like 2021 down a bit 114, then 2022 140. That was the year they almost made the 14 playoff there. 2023 down a bit, 2024 up, right? That's the year they made the playoff. Last year down a bit because they lost Nico. This year should theoretically be an up year. Now, they are replacing their quarterback, so we don't know much about that, which is one of the reasons I'm hesitating a bit. But, and again, Jim Knowles has had some times where sometimes it takes a year or two to get adjusted to a new program. So, yeah, like this team could be a really good team in 2027. Again, talking more about the GDP here, Tennessee is actually a relatively larger state comparatively to some of the other ones in the South. You've got Nashville there. So, you actually do have there is quite a lot of money potentially in this program. And this schedule is not that bad. Like, to me, personally, Georgia Tech is not particularly scary this year. Neither is Texas. Auburn, they could 100% upset Texas. Auburn should be about a 50-50 game. Alabama is a bit scary, but they've been doing better against Alabama. Not as well last year, but they've been doing better. Texas A&M, I think that's potentially winnable, as is LSU. Like, this is sneakily one of the easier schedules in the SEC. When you look at it, it's not that bad. You don't have Georgia, you don't have Florida, you don't have Oklahoma, So like
You get
it's
Texas at
sneakily,
home.
yeah, you get, so it's sneakily one of the better schedules. I like the over 7.5. I'm not. I think there's probably. I'll have to look at the number for them to make the playoff. It's probably three plus three something, maybe plus four something. It's a non-zero chance. I don't have enough confidence in the quarterback. But no, for me, Josh Heupel is a really good coach. I agree. He maybe has a ceiling as like a semi-finalist. I don't know if he can ever win a national championship here at Tennessee. But again, it's a good coach, and I think he's a very good coach, and I think it's a very good program. So yeah, I'd like them to go over. I think they could be very competitive this year. Because again, as we're talking here, we're like, okay, I like this SEC team, but I don't like this one. I don't like this one. I don't like this one. So some of them have to make it. Like there have to be probably at least three SEC teams in the playoffs. So three of them are going to get spots. So like there's a line where it's someone's going to get in there.
Yeah, the TikTok. I like that. You never thrown that on me before in all the years of the pod. Yeah, that's interesting. More optimism than I expected. You guys sold me on this. All right, now we get to this is just a Rorschach. You're just going to
Yeah.
interpret this how you want. LSU first season under Lane Kiffin. I'm just going to go through my concerns here because people seem to. There seems to be a lot of optimism here, and I can understand the case. I'm just going to give the counterpoints in a lot of instances here. Sam Levitt, is that a nice get? Yes. He was hurt last year, but still an 89 apex for a Big 12 team. I want to see how that translates to a much better defensive conference. They add three receivers with a Ryan of more than 460. Nice, but they're from Kansas State and Old Dominion and Hawaii. Again, are any of those going to work out? I don't know. I could see where all three of them maybe just kind of whatever. Who was the guy? Do you remember at Old Miss like 2 or 3 years ago? They got a guy from UTSA who was going to be like just an awesome receiver. I want to say like Zacharias Franklin or something like that. Does that name sound familiar?
I don't remember the name, but I think that sounds familiar. Yeah.
And he just was a non-factor. To the extent that this is Kiffin's decision, I think he made a good one in keeping Blake Baker as the defensive coordinator. He's improved it drastically in his 2 years at LSU. The two deep is heavy on transfers. Now, as much as I made the case against Robert, you might recall we made stronger cases against Clemson. Clemson is clearly just an average ACC program at this point. I think that you've got a lot more pieces here. So I like LSU in that week one spot. 8.5. Look, there's a wide variety of outcomes that I think can happen here. I'm going to say it's fairly valued, but that's across a broad spectrum. But boy, my questions about just the transfers coming in at receiver and quarterback, it could not work. I'm going to say it wrong. There's a very good chance that it might not work out with so many pieces that are coming up in the passing game in a very different conference. I don't know. Graham, why do you see, first of all, do you see the same just wide variety of possible outcomes here?
Yeah, there's a big tail on all this. And with that theme that we've been talking about of the alt line win totals, right? If you go under 7.5 for LSU, you get plus 90. If you go over 9.5, you get plus 215. So Vegas is saying, yeah, we could see them winning 7, we could see them winning 10, and we don't see a huge long shot there on either side. I think there's like two opposing thoughts that I have. One of them is that Kiffin had a lot of time to get ready for the portal, and he and his kind of core staff that he brought with him have shown that they are good portal evaluators. That is how they built that Ole Miss program. Year after year, I kept waiting for them to not hit on a batch of transfers, and they kept winning 9 and 10 games at Ole Miss over and over. They added 17 4 or 5 star transfers. Transfer re ranks can be very hard to judge, but I do think that like you look at the tackle they added, Jordan Seaton, the edge they added,
Yeah.
like they've got some pieces. 11 former P4 starters they brought in. I think what's interesting is they were top 20 in opponent adjusted type offensive stats the entire time he was at Ole Miss, even his first year. So like I trust the guy to put something together on offense. I mean, he even with Chambliss coming in from D2 or wherever he was, like they still made that work. But I do have questions, kind of like the run game. I've got questions about the wide receiver room. Some of those guys you were talking about, like they've got lots of twitch. Jace Brown, Eugene Wilson from Florida, Robert. I'm sure you remember Winston Watkins was a good young receiver for Ole Miss last year. Like they got those guys, but who's the big boundary guy? Like the last year's Ole Miss team, I think was able to take that step that the other Ole Miss teams hadn't been able to take because they had five guys that were legitimate one-on-one man beaters, but B, they were able to kind of throw up some more of those 50-50 balls. I don't know. They like Trey Green, the tight end, might be the best tight end in the country, and he is 6'7". So I don't want to gloss over that. But I do feel like they have a surplus of the same type of wide receiver that runs the same type of route and has the same type of skill set. Defense, I think they've got good pieces, but like I've got questions about Sam Levitt. You go back and look at his career. Yeah, that Arizona State season was special when he was a freshman. He was still fourth in the Big 12 in quarterback rating. He's never completed more than 61% of his passes. He takes a lot of sacks. I'm of the opinion that he's the type of mobile quarterback that can do some things with his feet in a league like the Big 12 that maybe doesn't have some of the D line big people speed that the SEC has. I don't know that he's a mobile quarterback in the SEC, really. So I'm like you, man. There's a range of outcomes there. I do think if I'm just going down the schedule right now, I see them in that 8-4 to 9-3 range. I guess there's enough upside there where maybe they hit and they go 10-2 and they make the playoff. I don't know. Some of that is like, where's Texas in week 11, right? There's some of those questions. Going on the road to Knoxville, that's a coin flip for me. But I do swing them out on the bottom side of this because I think the Ole Miss game in week 3, I don't know that Ole Miss goes on the run they did in the playoffs last year if Lane Kiffin had stayed their coach. I think that galvanized that group. There was a rallying effect that happened and a little bit of a hatred, for lack of a better term, after what he said about Oxford this offseason about it was harder to recruit black athletes there because of some of Mississippi's history and all that, which may or may not be true. I'm not, but the fact that he said it publicly after being the coach there for 6 years and never mentioning it, I just think that a hornet's nest kind of gets kicked up, and that's just not. Ole Miss is not going to lose that game, in my opinion. I just think that take all the actual football stuff out of it, they're just going to win that game because they are going to be too motivated to not do it. And so I think that we're going to get to the end of the year, and there's going to be this ironic moment where we might be like, hey, if LSU had won that Ole Miss game in week 3, they would have made the playoff, but they didn't. So they're out. And that'll be maybe the little bit of karmic boomerang type thing for all parties involved. But yeah, I think they'll be good. I don't think they'll be great. That's my thought on them.
Robert, any chance that in week 3 we see a golf ball and a bottle of mustard on the field at the end of the game like we saw when he returned to Tennessee?
This is gonna be a crazy that week 3 game. I is just gonna be a crazy game. I think the line is right now Ole Miss -2 or something like that. I'm not sure what the line is now, but that's gonna very clearly be a prime time week 3 game. Probably the most watched game that weekend. ESPN has that. That's clearly going to be the 7 o'clock, 7:30 game. Everyone is going to be watching that game. I feel sorry for any other game that's put on that time zone, that time frame. But yeah, that's going to be a hell of a game. LSU, look, I do love the pieces here. Lane had a really good offense the last couple of years. Blake Baker, if he's actually a good defensive coordinator, then that could actually potentially be a very good ad for them. Sam Levitt is a bit confusing to me. That was the one piece they were like, oh, Sam Levitt went to the portal and people were like, oh, he's this really good quarterback. And I'm like, okay, he's okay, but he's not that great. And then Lane Kiffin picked him up and I'm like, okay, that's a bit iffy for me. Like, there would have been other quarterbacks I would have targeted before Sam Levitt, but okay, he was injured last year, so that probably led to the 89 Apex, but still though, and he's done some things with Arizona State, but I attribute that more to Kenny Dillingham than I do to necessarily Sam Levitt. We'll have to see. I don't know. But this will be a good team. I'm completely on board with the kind of 8-4, 9-3 borderline, 100%. I think it's really going to come down to Texas or Alabama or Tennessee. It's going to come down to one of those three. I think they will smash Clemson week one. I think Clemson and LSU are two programs going in two very different directions. It's crazy that last year Clemson was a 3.5 point favorite against LSU. That was nuts. And they arguably both should have fired their coaches last year, but whatever. It was just Dabo getting strays here in the SEC preview here. But no, it's yeah, this LSU team is good. I just don't know how good, right? And it's just I think in a year in which I can't definitively say outside of probably Georgia which SEC team is going to make the playoff. I could they sure yeah they could make the playoff. They could potentially even make the SEC championship game depending on the chaos in front of them. But it's like this. I think with the exception of Georgia, there's this kind of mushy. We've talked about this mushy middle before. It's just there's a group of teams right below them with this. Like there's your Oklahoma, there's your Texas A&M, there's LSU in there, there's Bama in there. All those teams are in that next spot, and I just don't know which one of them is going to rise up. And that's the thing. It could be LSU. LSU could be one. Maybe Sam Levitt looks even better this year than he did with Kenny Dillingham, or maybe he doesn't, and this team goes 7-5. Right? I have no idea. Right? But it's. I think this team will be very fun to watch. Is my take.
Yeah, in the one thing is we've all made kind of the bear case in terms of what Sam Levitt might have in terms of ceiling. Don't be surprised if Hassan Longstreet, transfer from my school, comes in. He
Yeah.
can actually run. California quarterbacks are like tend to do pretty well in the SEC. They're the real deal. So the whole case that we just made might just go up in smoke in week 3, where they just flip the switch. Who knows? Yeah, just we'll see with LSU. That's just obviously the fascinating team to watch. All right, Florida goes to John Summerall. They bring Buster Faulkner from Georgia Tech, a brilliant hire, who brings his quarterback, Aaron Philo, with him with a 138 career apex and pretty good rushing stats in limited number of runs. I like the OL here. You've got a starter from Georgia Tech, a starter from Penn State, 2 returning Florida starters, and a Stanford starter. That's a lot of starters in there, which is good. I think Brad White is. Kentucky pretty regularly got the most out of the talent that they get there, which wasn't usually a lot and limited. Not a lot of transfers in on defense, too, which is interesting. I take that as a good sign, especially since Summerall's a defensive guy. Makes me think that he thinks that Napier may have left him a little bit of talent here. There's just too much of an unknown here for me to take a side here. The under's getting crushed, which I don't like. I've been a fan of Summerall basically since he broke my heart. I actually really liked when Womack was first coaching South Alabama. And then Summerall just came in and threw his genitals on the table and said, "This is how a championship is won there, guy." And he never stopped. He's as good as it gets. This is the best hire, this and Bob Chesney in the offseason. So great work by Florida. Graham, let me ask you, since you're on the other side of this trade, this is your rival, one of your rivals. Is this kind of the guy you were hoping they wouldn't hire?
I let me say this. I think that Lane Kiffin's ability to have a 2019 LSU type season at Florida was there. I think if they'd
Okay.
hired him, there was enough inertia there possibly where it could all just come together for them and they'd have a juggernaut one season. I don't know
Yeah.
that anything Lane Kiffin does is built to last, right? He's not somebody that loves recruiting. He's not somebody that he can lose to Kentucky with maybe the best roster in college football. So, he has that potential. I think Summerall is very likable. I like him. I think he's got Billy Napier rightfully is disliked by Florida fans, but Billy Napier leaves a very nice roster for a first year head coach. And I think that Summerall is a capable guy to come in and manage it. So, yeah, I think the long term of Florida under Summerall is something that I'm banking on. I was never someone who thought the Napier hire was going to work out well. I'm definitely like Florida is going to get their shit together here over the next couple of years, my opinion. But yeah, I guess as far as this season, I'm very interested to see what exactly happens. Faulkner, obviously, I know and have a lot of respect for. It's a really good coordinator. From a Georgia standpoint, he has an institutional knowledge there that I think helped Georgia Tech compete against Georgia and almost beat them a couple years ago. It'll be interesting to see if that carries over or if some of his former players now cycling out of the program sort of helps Georgia gain back a little bit of edge there. But Philo is interesting. I think clearly he has talent. Nothing that he's done at Georgia Tech is predictive at all to me. He didn't really play anybody except for one NC State game. So I think he's a little more unknown than some people think. It feels like people are talking like Trammell Jones is still in that battle. I'm not sure if that's accurate or not, but I'm interested to see what that offense becomes because Brent Key at Georgia Tech was very much we want to run the ball. He's a former offensive line coach. That Haynes King physical run ability opened up everything else for them. If you look back at the receivers they had on their roster, like in 2024, those guys are all like they went all over college football to big programs, and one of them's at Florida now, Singleton. I think Singleton's really good. Florida's got skill talent. Ball is very good. I'm just interested to see what this offense is, and does Philo hold off Jones? Because it seems like Philo is Buster's guy. And there's a one Florida media member I know who told me that there was like maybe a little dissension in the ranks around wanting to bring in another transfer quarterback besides Philo and not being like all in on him in the portal. And Faulkner wanted Philo. So I'm interested to see how that plays. But I told you guys, I predict them to beat Georgia. I think this will be a team that loses. I think they can lose at Missouri in week 5, and I won't be shocked by that at all. And I think that they could beat anybody on their schedule like they did last year to Texas. I'm curious to see what the identity is. And defensively, I think that they've got some nice pieces, like I do. And I think that their receiving core is really good on offense and will stretch some things. Very much unknown. I don't really know. This is not a win total I would ever consider betting.
Yeah, interesting that the under's taking so much money, but I don't know how much. It's all a guess right now. Robert, just my take on this team is optimistic for 27 and some, like Graham said, some spots this year. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is going to be the team that I'm going to find a lot of value in. It's going to be like, oh, we're like 7.5 point underdogs at Texas, and I'm betting them, right? It's going to be like, that's the value. It's going to be like, oh, we're like 13.5 point underdogs at Georgia. Or against Georgia. I think it's a neutral site. So it's gonna be like we're gonna do that. That's the value I think we're gonna have on this team. I think it's a good team. I think John Summerall was 100% the best hire they could have made. I think it's gonna take a couple of years to figure out the mess from Will Muschamp. 100% we want to see a bowl game this year.
Will Muschamp, you mean?
Sorry,
Napier.
Billy Napier. Sorry, couple of Florida. It's getting late out here on the East Coast. No, couple of Florida head coaches back, but no, yeah, the Billy Napier mess. Because again, this should theoretically be one of the premier blue chip schools in the programs in the country. And they went 4-8 last year, off a decently tough schedule, but it should have been a far better year. It should have been a better year last year. A lot of inexcusable losses there, and from the last couple of years as well. So no, Summerall's a good hire. This team will put it back together. I could see potentially them getting to the playoffs, but it's going to take a lot to have that happen. You're going to have to get a couple of major upsets there. You're going to have to beat Georgia or Oklahoma for that to happen. I can 100%. I want to see a bowl game this year to see if John Summerall's on track, and I'd love to see 8-4. If we see 8-4 in a bowl game, I'd be very happy. I think you'll start to see this Florida team next year would be because Aaron Philo would probably still have another year of eligibility if they hold him, get a good portal class. Watch out for this team next year.
Yeah, at Texas and the cocktail party in Oklahoma is not a fun stretch there. That's as rough as it gets, man. My gosh. All right. We're going to spend a little less time on these teams because now we're getting to South Carolina. I've had it with this program. Lenore Sellers, they plateaued. There's a big surprise. The running game takes a step back. They bring in Kendall Briles. Great. So I've got crosswinds here. I've got a promising quarterback. Now he actually gets a major upgrade at OC, and the offensive line is a look. If I'm a South Carolina fan, I'm concerned. I have a starter from UCF, starter from East Carolina, starter from Purdue, awesome, a homegrown guy, and a starter from NC State. I'm just not excited about that. Beamer's defenses have been pretty good. Look, if they're making a game of it at Oklahoma in week 9, awesome. I'll tune in. But I don't know. For a while, I've been just tired of investing my time in this program. So I'm just throwing my hand saying, if you want to bet either side of the 6.5, then great. Maybe Kendall Browse makes it more interesting this year, though. It should, but you're closer to that than I am, Graham. He's because wasn't he in the Southeast Conference at one point or no?
He was at Arkansas, yeah, before he went to TCU, and
Oh
then
boy. Okay.
um,
Yeah.
yeah, he did a good job with KJ Jefferson at Arkansas
Yeah.
in like 2021. So he was much better under Bryles than he was under anybody else. And I think to that point, like Lenore Sellers, certainly a better like talent and more of a NFL potential kind of guy than KJ Jefferson ever was. But Sellers, like big mobile guy, a lot of arm strength, like maybe not super adept at certain types of throws in terms of layering the football and all that. And I think like last year's South Carolina offense, my experience of it was, oh, they were trying to square peg round hole the thing and like feature Lenore Sellers like doing things that he hadn't done before. And I think that like just let him be super athletic and work off script and just be good. Their offensive line last year was terrible. It was the worst in the SEC, I think, by orders of magnitude. And it'll be interesting to see how they brought in a ton of transfers. I think oddly enough, even though they don't return a single offensive line starter, they return the most offensive line snaps in America. So
Yeah.
what that looks like is anyone's guess. But yeah, I guess like somewhat thinking they have a favorable schedule here. It would not totally shock me for them to win at Alabama in week 4 and then beat Kentucky and go to Florida at 5-0. Like,
Wow.
that's not outside the realm of possibility to me. I don't know what happens after that, but I think that Beamer needs this team to go 7-5 to keep his job. I thought they had a really underrated secondary the last couple of years, actually. That seems to have turned over. So I'm what is the total here? 6.5. I'm gonna I'm gonna go I'm gonna go under. I think 6-6 is where this whole thing lands. Like even if they do start 5-0, I look at the
Jeez.
back end of that
Wow.
schedule. I look at it: Tennessee, Oklahoma, A&M, Arkansas, Georgia, Clemson. They beat Arkansas. That's all. Hopefully, but I don't think they're beaten.
Yeah, that is a rough stretch. Yeah, Graham makes a good point, Robert, about like your metrics here have them off the charts in terms of snaps. Now you don't basically you're not counting that only one of those is at basically a power 2 program,
Yeah.
which I think is where it gets tough.
And I think that's the one thing. It's like, okay, great, you get all these starters, and they had a ton of snaps last year, so you're returning more snaps on offense than you had last year. But so what? They're not from the SEC. It's a Big Ten, a Big 12, American, a part-time starter from the Big Ten, one year
ACC.
starters, and
Oh,
then another ACC. Purdue, yeah, Purdue part-time.
yeah.
Yeah, no, it's yeah, this is also the same thing for me too, right? Lenora Sellers looked really good in 2024, and I made the argument that this team should have been a playoff team back in 2024. And then last year they took a massive step back, but not on offense. It was on defense, right? If you had said Lenora Sellers wasn't going to take a step back, would you have said, "Oh yeah, this team's clearly going to be 4-8"? Like, no, I don't think you would have said that. I think you would have said, "Oh, okay, then they're going to be like 8-4 or in close to the playoffs." But they just weren't. They had a lot of losses on this schedule. Some of them were close than others. Like the Texas A&M loss, that was almost inexcusable. Somehow they lost to Clemson. I don't know how they did that. They probably should have beaten Clemson too. Like there's just it was and they lost to Bama by 7, and it was a
Yeah.
rough year last year, and I don't know how this team is. I like if that was the record last year. This year when the schedule is a lot tougher, like I don't think it's that much better. And in terms of Shane Beamer, I like. Yeah, okay, maybe he can improve this year. Obviously, he could probably do a lot better than 4-8, and he should. If he gets 4-8 again, yeah, he's 100% fired. But is that what this program is? Is this program just like, oh, okay, we're gonna go 7-5 or 8-4 every year now? Is that just what this program is? Because if that's the case, then if that's your aspiration, then sure, keep Shane Beamer. But if not, if you're trying to win an SEC championship, then you got to try something else, right? So it's just like this team's clearly a good team, but it's their strategy is just they're like I don't know, maybe they've just hit a kind of a wall here where they're like we're fringe competitive, but we're not there yet, and that's the best we could do is fringe competitive, not actually competitive.
South Carolina has never won an SEC title. I think they won an ACC title in the 80s before they came to the SEC in 1992. But this is not a program that there hasn't been a coach at South Carolina who left without retiring or being fired since World
Yeah.
War II. It's just not a program that's going to do all that. I think if you want to talk about some of these conference strength conversations, South Carolina is actually a great example in the SEC's favor of this program has Lenora Sellers, who a lot of people would give $4 million to in the portal. They've got Dylan Stewart, who will be a first round pick off the edge. They got a couple former 5 stars on the defensive line. They got Caleb Herring over from Tennessee. They are spending money. Nick Harbor, right? That kid was one of the top recruits in his class, and they've held on to him. More importantly, they are resourced, but the depth is just when you get past that front line of players and they start wearing down and all that, they just don't have the depth to
Yep.
keep up with the upper and middle tier, I think, of the SEC in most seasons. The year they almost went to the playoff a couple of years ago, they had this very senior laden defense and especially front seven that had been together for many years and a lot of depth that they had kind of developed in house and held on to. And I think the one concern I have for Beamer is he's started to get into that portal churn mode where, yeah, you're bringing guys in, but you're also losing them. And so the net result, I think, is not
Yeah.
very different from where you started.
Yeah, and you came up right just short of the point is that whole thing about kind of what South Carolina is. And the punchline is that's why it's a coach killer program, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
It's
if 7-5 and 8-4 could be a reality for South Carolina every year in a 16-team SEC, that would be like the second most successful coaching tenure and era in the history of the program. Like Spurrier had
yeah,
more 10-win seasons there than the program had in 120 plus years of college
yeah.
football.
Steve Spurrier might have been the worst thing to happen to that program long term.
Probably, man. Yeah, it's like that. It's like that girl you met that one night that acted
Yep.
like she was interested in you. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's exactly like that.
Exactly. Well said. All right, I've got a very specific take. If I can go to the next slide here, Auburn brings in Alex Golish and Byron Brown at quarterback. They lose kind of everything to the portal in terms of wide receiver. They add a bunch of yards from the portal from South Florida. Two of their offensive line starters are South Florida. South Florida, I'll come back to that in a second. To the extent that it was his decision, I think he made a good decision to keep DJ Durkin as the defensive coordinator. To the extent that it was his decision. Now, Auburn has, as we know, 47 people that think that they're athletic director, so probably wasn't his decision. It was probably one of those 47 people or group thereof. My specific take on Auburn this year is, was this a good team last year? South Florida? Yeah. Okay on defense. They improved on defense. So I'll take Durkin over Todd Orlando. Thank you very much. It's this bullet point right here. And you guys, this wasn't in the deck I sent you, so this is kind of news. South Florida, the average opposing defense that they faced last year had a defensive apex plus. That's my past defense adjusted for strength of opponent of 123, which is not good. This year at Auburn, the opponents are at 86. That is a big delta right there. And I'm just concerned that you could see a collective kind of, yeah, we don't belong here.
Uh-huh.
And maybe long term it works because he wants to get the goalish culture in, and God bless you for that. I'm seeing this at Penn State with Matt Campbell, where he took a mid Big 12 team to enjoy the Big Ten, enjoy it. I can just see that being a scenario here. Not a much to bet it, but boy, it wouldn't surprise me because there's a lot of South Florida here, and kids went to South Florida because they can't get into Auburn on their football merits. Do I make a convincing case there, Graham?
Yeah, I'm with you, man. I think they've got one returning starter on the entire offense, and it is Jeremiah Cobb. He's a good running back, but they brought in five wide receivers from
Yeah.
South Florida and said goodbye to Cam Coleman, Eric Singleton, Perry Thompson, Malcolm Simmons, who was incredible in that Alabama game, Horatio Fields. All those guys are at big time programs now. Auburn last year, I thought had one of the top four rosters in the SEC, legitimately, because that defense was super salty.
Mhm.
That was probably the best defensive personnel that I saw with my own two eyes last year was when I went to cover the Georgia Auburn game. Because yes, they bring back Xavier Atkins. Durkin helped them retain, I think, four or five starters. But man, I will say that the goalish slash like hyper spread offense is designed to operate at some sort of level of competency, even if you don't have tackles that can block. And but one of those offenses that's designed to work without talent, as odd as that sounds. But I can't get on board with over 6.5. I could see like that Baylor game. That's a toss up. I'd favor Florida a little bit there. Maybe they beat Vandy. They'll beat Arkansas, Mississippi State, Samford, but that's still only getting me to 5 or 6 wins. I'm under here.
Yeah. Robert, and we were kind of from like year one, we liked goalish at South Florida, and it obviously took a while too. But the concerns, even if it works out great, are you also concerned about just a lot of South Florida on this roster on this offense?
Yeah, I am too, right? Remember, it took him a couple of years to build at South Florida, right? It wasn't just, and South Florida was in really dire straits, so it took him a couple of years. It's not necessarily a knock, but it's a difference between building a program that's competitive in the American versus building a program that's competitive in the SEC. And you can't just, this is assuming the Senate bill passes or whatever, and that's a huge debate for another day. But if the Senate bill does pass, we are going to see a lot more of this. We're going to see a lot more of Auburn and a lot more of Penn State this year, which is Power 2 or 4 school fires their head coach, goes to a lower tier, and then just basically takes a coach. And then because of that, then everyone on that roster gets a free transfer, and then they follow the coach. It's basically going to be a cheat code. If the Senate bill passes, it's going to be a cheat code, because if not, then all students only have one transfer. So that's going to be the new cheat code. So this Auburn and Penn State this year are the big test cases for me. I'm going to be watching these very intently just to see how these go and to see the kind of thesis of the case of, and also to a lesser extent Tulane. But it's going to be like, hey, does this work? Does taking a coach and the entire team from a lower tier, putting it into an upper tier, does it work? I'd say the difference between Iowa State and Penn State, considering the fact that Iowa State actually beat Iowa last year, a Big Ten team, decent Big Ten team, is a lot smaller than the delta between South Florida and Auburn. I think that those are not the same thing. So that's my take on that. I am a little concerned about the South Florida starters. I think it's a lot easier to have a really good wide receiver in the G5, and then if you're throwing all of them against some SEC secondaries, I don't know how well that's going to go. Byron Brown was good last year at South Florida, but how good is he going to be against SEC defenses? Okay, they beat, not shown here, but they beat Florida, but they beat Florida barely. They beat Florida 18-16, which, I mean, for USF, that's a big deal. But if Auburn were to beat Florida 18-16, that's not particularly impressive. That's like, oh, you barely beat Florida, right? So there are some concerns about that. I think this is going to be a team that this schedule is pretty rough. I don't know I don't want to play the over under, but like you've got Georgia, LSU, Ole Miss, Alabama there, and then Florida and Tennessee in the first half, and Vanderbilt potentially even. So I'm gonna mostly stay away from this. This will be like if I see some value plays, like this is gonna be like, oh, okay, Auburn's 7.5 point underdogs, so I'll play them this week or something like that. That's where I see the value being on Auburn this year.
Sorry, that was my dog, not yours, Graham.
I know. I was looking around for a second. Tell, is that you?
Yeah, I think we all agree on Auburn. And also, Graham made a good point too. If you've got just a conference full of just awesome coaches here, you could just limit or you might have just a ceiling of 3 or 4 losses or 8 wins. We'll see though.
Yeah.
All right. Program in transition, Vanderbilt. They have the good Tim Beck at offensive coordinator. Good for them. He's made a big improvement here. Obviously, they lose Diego Pavia. The defense just hasn't been up to speed. They're still 14th in the SEC, which is a big concern considering that Clark Lee, his background is on defense. I want to, pardon my dog, I want to go on the under here, but I'm just not going to, and I'll get to that in a second. You lose Pavia, you've got a new quarterback here, a true freshman in Jared Curtis. Does it seem like he's going to win that one, Graham?
The reason he flipped allegedly was because he was
Okay.
going to start as a freshman. So if he doesn't start, that will be quite fascinating.
Yeah. The only reason I'm not going to bet under here is because you would always be foolish to bet against the guy who actually coaches this team, Jerry Kill. Robert, we love this picture. You've got Jerry Kill,
Yes.
Shouting out directions to the offense here. Clark Lee's just having a look at the scoreboard, saying, "I wonder what's going on here."
Oh, I love it. Hey man, I am very much team Jerry Kill. I'm there.
Yeah, so I'm not going to. This can be more of like the Vanderbilt, the Vandals, just punk rock Vanderbilt, where it's just like, yeah, watch this, and they'll do some dumb ones here, but this is where Jerry Kill does his best work. So not going to bet it, but just going to watch it with intent once I get off the radar here. Graham?
Yeah. Oh man, like Pavia rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, but his chip, for lack of a better term, like his mentality, his desire for competition
Yeah.
and contact, I think like really everybody in that program, staff included, got behind it and followed it. And I think that he had a remarkable effect. I think he's the best player in the
Yep.
history of Vanderbilt football without any
Yeah.
question.
Yep.
Not do you just lose him, but you also lose the entire offensive line.
Yeah.
You lose Stowers, who was an incredible tight end. They lose, I think Sherrill and Trey Richardson were both 800-yard guys. I know Richardson's gone. I believe Sherrill's back at wide receiver, but like it's a full revamp job. And I don't know, man. Like after last year, I told myself, hey, I'm not ever going to bet against like this kind of Vandy brain trust because they've shown that they can workshop the portal and all these things you're talking about. But they got to beat, let's say their 5.5 is their total. So
Yeah.
Austin P, Delaware, they'll win those. I would take them over Arkansas just based on staff. I guess I'll take them over Kentucky and Miss. Yeah, shit. Yeah, I guess if they can take out NC State or one of these other SEC teams, then they can win 6 and go to a bowl, which I think would be a really a remarkable accomplishment
Yeah.
with what they've got and what they lost. But heck, like I said, I wouldn't do it again, so I'm not gonna doubt them again. I'll go over on Vandy on general principle over 6.5. You can get it at plus 164. Vandy's going bowling, baby.
I like it. Robert, the kill machine. Let's not forget, this is pre Jerry Kill, and then Saban says, "Oh boy, look at
Killdozer.
this." Are you been being like wait and see mode, but see intently?
That's the kind of crazy thing, right? Clark Lee has been here for several years, I think at least 5 years, right? 53 in the first year, 78, 62, clearly stagnating. Bring in Jerry Kill and Diego Pavia up to 102, 126, right? Just crazy improvement from bringing in Pavia and Jerry Kill. I think I'm curious as to why Jerry Kill is still here. I would have left because it's clear Diego Pavia was the best thing about this program, and he's gone now. So I would have tried to find another home, but again, maybe he just is kind of likes it here in at Vanderbilt. I don't know, but it's interesting. I don't love this team this year. I think the 5.5. This team could be like it's gonna be struggling for a bowl. This team is going to sink very quickly back to Vanderbilt's like a 22-point underdog in this game or something like that. That's what's going to happen against Georgia, against Tennessee. They're gonna sink real fast and go right back to mean regression. I don't want to touch this because again, you're betting against Jerry Kill, so I don't want to do that. But if Jerry Kill left this program, you would not. I'd be betting this under instantly. This would have been the first under I would have bet if he left the program.
Yeah.
And I can't. At some point, he will leave the program, and then I'll be immediately betting against that. Or if Clark Lee gets hired somewhere else because they're like, oh, he's a good coach, which maybe he will, maybe not. Maybe he's going to be like, maybe basically the media story coming out of this year is going to be like, oh, he was really good when he got a quarterback. He needs a quarterback. And it's going to be like, yeah, not really. That's the argument I think it's going to be in the future. Is now it's going to be like, oh, he had Diego Pavia and he was good. So you just got if he gets to a bigger program with better resources and you give him a good quarterback, he'll be fine. And then we're just going to instantly fade that program if that happens next year. So this is the thing. This is going to be a huge year for this. But I don't want to bet against Jerry Kill. I'll find some value spots on Jerry Kill. He's probably going to get Clark Lee another job, honestly. If this team makes a bowl game, then he's going to get Clark Lee, he's going to get promoted and go off somewhere else is probably what's going to happen. So, yeah.
I think if Marcus Freeman leaves Notre Dame, that Clark Lee would maybe be the first
Oh,
call
baby.
there because he was
Yes.
DC at Notre Dame at one point. And
Just in time for my Trojans to get them back on the schedule, please.
Yeah, as a USC fan, I'm sure you'd love that. Yeah.
like the answer to your question on Jerry Kill is who else is going to let him shadow coach their team?
That's the thing.
Like he gets to do whatever he wants, and then Clark Lee goes and deals with the media and donors and all that, and he just gets to draw up ball plays with the boys and live in Nashville. What's wrong with that?
Yes, he lives my life. I'm a consultant. I work from home. I just tell people they're doing wrong, and I think I'm smart. All right. I've got just a singular take on Missouri. A singular take. And it's this third from the last bullet point right here. Eli Drinkowitz, his first 3 years at Missouri was 17 and 19, and we forget that. And then the last 3 years, he goes 26 and 10. Yeah. And the reason he went 26 and 10 is now being replaced by Chip Lindsey. Kirby Moore is now the head coach at Washington State, A-plus hire. Guys, I hope you liked the Michigan offense last year because you're going to see it in Missouri. I'm calling this fairly valued, but man, I really want to bet the under here. I think that, like I said, the whole reason that Eli has a job here is no longer with the program. Did I nail that one, Graham?
I think Eli is a good offensive mind in and of itself. And that would be the one thing is if this starts going real south early against Kansas and Mississippi State, Eli did call plays at Mizzou at one point in his career. He could shadow OC this thing. I can't believe this win total 6.5. Of all the lines that we've talked about and seen, this one shocks me the most. I don't get it. Austin Simmons, sure, like Chambliss beat him out. And don't get me wrong, Chambliss was good. He's a good player, really good player. But they lost all but one starter on the offense. And yeah, Ahmad Hardy's good. He might be one of the best running backs in the country, but he is like recovering from a gunshot wound. So I think that kind of leaves a little open-ended question there. And then defensively, I think Batoon is a really good coordinator, underrated. I think he's very much similar to what Blake Baker is now at LSU, who was at Missouri before him. But they lose all their best pass rushers. Like they get Darius Smith back, who got hurt last year, who was a Georgia transfer, and will give them some speed and length off the edge. But man, this is portal built, and I just don't know what to think of it. I think the defense, they'll probably workshop something and be good because they do have some pieces from other good SEC programs that left or didn't fit in for what reason or wanted more money. But I can't get to 7 wins here with Chip Lindsey. Yeah, I can't do it, man. I'm not going to do it. Bryce Underwood didn't even have a quarterback coach last year with Chip Lindsey there. I'm just not. I have a lot of respect for Eli, but I don't. They could lose any of these P4 games, right? And they've got 10 of them because they're an SEC school. They're not immune to losing to Camario Taylor in Mississippi State.
I was going to say, and I don't want to spoil that. That's the team we're going to do next. Robert, I think I'm just kind of realizing this after year. I'm 56 years old, my 57th year. I think Vegas just doesn't really appreciate the change in coordinators, and especially something like this when it comes to these season win totals. Does that seem fair?
Yeah, I think a lot of people. Missouri's been kind of good the last couple of years, kind of 8-4 last year, but definitely one of the better teams in one of the top tier SEC teams. And I think people just kind of say, "Oh, okay, they're just going to continue that way." And 6 and 6, 7 and 5. I don't want to touch it because I would take the under, but I think there's probably just better plays. Yeah, they could lose any of the P4 Power 4 games, but they could also win any of them either. I would if they just beat Arkansas, or maybe they're just the final nail in the coffin of Texas's season or something, right? They could do that, right? But every time this team had an opportunity to show they were really good, like last year against Alabama, they lost by 3. Last year against Vanderbilt, they lost by 7. Last year they just couldn't compete with Oklahoma, and then they lost to Virginia in a bowl game too, and pretty handily. Oh, no, it's 13-7, so it was close. It was a score, but again, it's like that's what 4 one-score losses. This is the thing. It's not they're not a good team, but they're just like an okay-ish SEC team that was able to beat lower tier SEC teams last year. But I just think they're now in that lower tier SEC now, and I think that's the problem. So 6-6 is more than possible, but I just don't want to touch this team this year.
Yeah, no real impressive wins for having 8 wins last year too. That kind of got
I
the
mean,
benefit of the draw.
Missouri is the team that, like, I understand why Big Ten and Big 12 and ACC fans like get pissed when, because like Missouri doesn't beat anybody that they shouldn't beat, and they go 8-4, and they're like number 22 in the country, and like the playoff committee loves to put Missouri at 23 every week, man. And I do understand why people are like, yeah, what did they do? I get it. I do think Drink's a good coach though, and he's done a good job there.
Robert, it's like Graham's been reading our text with Isaiah. My goodness, yeah, clearly, yeah, that's the sentiment, definitely. All right, their first road game is Mississippi State, which, to your point, no gimme here. Camario Taylor, 124 apex and just 2 starts against Ole Miss. Not the best defensive team. Wake, interesting, not a great defensive team, but a good coach in Jake Dickert, who usually does pretty well against a raw quarterback. So there's positive signs there. The less reported James Franklin angle here. The successor hiring his predecessor as defensive coordinator. Zach Arnett,
Mm-hmm.
very good defensive coordinator, his first run there at Mississippi State. So I like this. I like that hire. Tough stretch here from weeks 5 to 9: Alabama, LSU, Oklahoma, and Texas. I still need to see some progress, but I do the promise of Taylor and maybe Arnett can look. It's tough, like we were talking about the top about 5 hours ago about the resources here are limited, but I think Arnett's probably the best you can do and the best you can hope for in terms of what the defense is going to do. So I'm not going to play it, but if I see some signs of life, maybe I'll do something in 2027. But some things to like here, right, Graham?
Yeah, there are. Mario Taylor is very worth liking. I like the fact that we saw him start against Ole Miss to end the season last year, and that was not an injury start. They chose to start him. I think he had almost 200 rushing yards in that game and made some throws. It will be interesting because Levy's kind of your classic dink and dunk style air raid. What does that look like? Because I think Camario is a explosive type player. So I'm
Yeah,
very fascinated to see, do they incorporate that run element more with the QB and really unlock all of that and some of the Dak Prescott era kind of concepts, right? Where you get like a QB power fake that safeties actually have to respect because of how talented he is. But the running back they've got, Fluff Bothwell, one of
yeah,
the underrated better backs in the SEC, and Anthony Evans was, I think, a 1,000-yard guy for them at receiver last year. He was a Georgia kid who came over and does a lot. Okay, he was 800 plus yards, but still good player. I think they've got firepower. They've got some good skill talent when you're portaling in receivers and tight ends. I feel like that's usually fairly predictive, especially guys that have already been in the P4 and the SEC. I like it. Their offensive line last year was terrible in pass pro. Don't know that it can be any worse. I think having a mobile guy like Taylor back there helps. And yeah, man, I'm on board with the Arnett thing. He had some really salty Mississippi State defenses that were
yeah.
built off of a lot of scheme and aggression. And I think he kind of plays a high risk, create turnover style that can lead to busted coverages for 70-yard touchdowns, but it can also lead to a game where maybe they force a few turnovers against a new quarterback at Alabama, or maybe they catch somebody like Mateer who has been known to get a little wild with it, right? So I actually am going to go over on Mississippi
Wow.
State at 4.5. Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know that they make the bowl, but I kind of like them at Minnesota. Actually, just where Minnesota's at coming into the year with sort of a lot of turnover there. Capturing them early, I think, is good, and so I would put them at 3, and I could see them. Winnable games are at South Carolina, Missouri, Vanderbilt. I'm not sure Auburn's unwinnable. And the end of the year game against Ole Miss is just one of those kind of, you never know what's
Yeah.
going to happen. So I think there's 5 potentially winnable games, and they're at 3 already. If they can get half of those, they go over, or less than
Yeah.
half. If they can get 2 of the 5, they go over, right? So
Yep. Yeah. Good point. Robert, I kind of like this team over Minnesota since we kind of crapped on their quarterback situation. What about you?
Yeah, no, I agree. This team did some stuff last year, right? They beat Southern Miss with Charles Huff. That's not nothing. They beat Arizona State with a comeback. That was a close game, and they did win that game on the last second Hail Mary. That's not nothing either. They barely lost to Florida in Billy Napier's last game. Still not completely sure why. Despite winning the game, Billy Napier got fired after that game, but whatever, that's fine. They were like 11.5 point favorites in that game, and they only won by 2. So maybe that has something to do with it. I don't know. But then they somehow almost beat Texas last year, too. They took Texas to overtime. And then, yeah, the rest of it wasn't particularly close. 20-point loss to Georgia, 20-point loss to Missouri, 20-point loss to Ole Miss, and then a 14-point loss to Wake Forest in the bowl game. So improving. This team is improving. It's getting better. It's not there yet. They're not there yet. But they are improving. And okay, this is a team that I think, again, yeah, after obviously the horrible loss for, what's his name? The head coach.
Mike Leach.
Mike Leach, yes, sorry. After the unfortunate loss of Mike Leach, basically Levy's come in. There was the one bad year, and then Levy came in in the last 2 years. He's been getting them back on the right track. This team was really competitive under Mike Leach, and it was sad to see Mike Leach pass away. He would have been coaching for many more years. Probably be talking about him right now, but this is the thing: is that this is a program rebuilding, and there was definitely some progress last year. Let's see some more progress this year. That Vanderbilt may not be that good, so that could be a competitive game. Missouri could be competitive. South Carolina could be competitive. Minnesota could be competitive. There's an outside shot at a bowl here. I think this team keeps getting more competitive every year. Let's see what they can do this year. I'm excited to see what they can do.
I'd be shocked if that happens, but they made a bowl last year, actually. So, yeah, not such a
At five
stretch.
and eight, yeah, the rare 5-8 bowl appearance, an incredible, what a moment for college football history, really.
UCLA, I think, did that too one year. All right, look, this is just, I like the hire of Will Stein at Kentucky. I have no idea what it means this year. I think he's got a quarterback to use in Kenny Minchie. This is just wait and see for me. I'm not going to pretend to know any better. And by the way, University of Kentucky, thank you very much for getting this guy out of my conference. I was tired of seeing him just tearing it up in the Big Ten. So let him make somebody else miserable. So wait and see for me on Kentucky. But I like the hire long term. What about you, Graham?
Yeah, I love the hire long term. I don't think that offense could be any worse than it was last year, right? Like, I think, especially with Stein at the helm, like, they'll probably make some noise, and they feel like one of those teams that, like, could ruin someone else's season, right? Like, I'm not sure that they're ready to go do a lot on like week after week, but they have they do have some good stuff. Like, they have some nice pieces that you can get excited about. It'll be interesting to see exactly what it looks like. And I think the hire he made DC wise, bringing Jay Bateman in from A&M, was nice. I know that was Elko's defense, but like that it's a solid hire and a guy that has knowledge of the personnel of the teams that you're going to play. So I thought that was a wise move by him. I really don't have enough of a feel or an education on them to make a pick one way or the other, though.
Yeah, Bateman was really good at Army too. You have to coach because you're at a disadvantage from talent every week. So I like that hire too. Robert, your guy's no longer in Eugene. How you like that?
Yeah, he was really good. We're sad to see him go. The thing is, though, let's see what he can do this year. This is a rebuild here at Kentucky. They were like a middle tier, decidedly middle tier slash bottom tier SEC program. Let's see where we can get there. I don't have a lot of expectations for year one, but if this team is like massive underdogs in some of these games, they're definitely bettable in there. So I want to see what he could do, what he can come up with, and let's. Is it a rebuild? This is gonna be a long rebuild. So let's see what he can do.
Agree. Now, on the other hand, a new coach of whom I have huge expectations, Ryan Silverfield. I am not in wait and see here. I'm going under. This is the worst hire in all of FBS. Thank you very much, Hunter Yurachek. You,
Say
I mean,
more. Uh,
there's an SEC guy in here. I'm just gonna be reserved. I'll just say that, well done.
why?
You really,
Why is he
you,
the worst hire? Like, what is the? I'm not saying I disagree with you. I'm just
the
curious,
other
Rod.
6 or 7 seasons at Memphis, he never even made the conference title game.
Yeah.
We've talked about there are quarterbacks that are coach killers. This guy is a coach who's a quarterback killer. You look at Seth Hennigan year after year.
Yeah,
His
yeah.
metrics went down. Seth Hennigan used to be like the bell of the ball, and by the end, they're like Seth Hennigan. And the thing that he gets away with it is because people just forget. Just Seth Hennigan goes off the grid. If the Arch has a bad season, Sark's going to pay. Seth Hennigan disappeared, and people are like, oh yeah, what? Who was that? They don't even know Ryan Silverfield. I know Ryan Silverfield. I don't think he's a good coach. This was a horrible hire. And of course, he brought his OC with him. If there's one thing that I think that Ron Roberts is a good enough DC here, I don't like the quality transfers they brought in on defense. I'm not going to wait. This team is not winning 5 games. I'm hardly alone with that, with the under getting crushed at minus 175. Even to lay that much, I'm going under here. Thank God they have John Calipari. I'll just say that just to take the pressure off this guy, because this is it's not going to work. It's not going to work. It's not going to work. So Graham, tell me it's going to work. I'm all wrong.
No, it's not going to work. Yeah, I'm coming in right behind you, buddy. I'm not saying Sam Pittman was like God's gift to coaching, but I think he was better than this. If I had to run the scenarios for 2026, I think that their record's probably a win and a half better or so if Pittman's still around. And I thought last year with Petrino running the offense, God knows they put up numbers. They put up 35 on Ole Miss. They put up 31 on Tennessee. They put up 42 on A&M. They put up 24 on Auburn. Nobody really put up points on Auburn. They put up 35 on Mississippi State. They put up 37 on Texas.
Yeah,
That was an explosive offense. If they'd had any semblance of a defense, they could have been like 8-4 or 9-3, honestly, like that. So the fact that they just flushed all that and decided to reboot, I understand Taylor Green left, but what they did with Taylor Green versus the guy I saw at Boise and
yeah,
doing it in the SEC was very impressive. I know, yeah, I get it. They were 2-10 at the end of the day, but college football history is littered with teams that lost a lot of close games one year and then came back the next year and got those to swing their way. Bad hire. I get that the story was maybe over with Pittman, but still, just didn't really make sense. I don't have any real feel or vibe for Tim Cramsey coming over from Memphis. Like, I guess, man, I will tell you if you want like a Graham's alt line play of the year, it's
yes.
Georgia at Arkansas in week 3 because Silverfield last season on his radio show out of nowhere had this quote about how every week they like to do a "this is not our culture" kind of presentation with the team. And he was like, example, Georgia wide receiver gets arrested for driving 140 miles an hour. He's like, that happens every week. Uh, and that clip, of course, went viral. And
Oh man.
so I don't know. At media days, he had some sort of line of, yeah, I reached out to Kirby to let him know I didn't mean it or whatever, but or that I have respect for him. But look, A, Arkansas fired Sam Pittman, who Kirby Smart loved,
Oh, that's
helped
right.
Kirby
Yeah, yeah,
build
yeah.
his offensive line, and B, uh, like Kirby's kind of softened a little bit in his old age when it comes to I'm secure. I won 2 national titles. I'm not going to run the score up on some coach at a school that doesn't have the talent I do. But I could see him absolutely knocking Ryan Silverfield's dick in the dirt for 4 quarters in Fayetteville, especially after they come off of a 9:15 Eastern kickoff at Utah and turn around and kick off at 11
Mhm.
a.m. Central against Georgia. If I can find some alt line Georgia minus 41 and a half or something, I'll be taking a piece of that.
That I like that heads up. Not to mention, Robert, we actually said that Dulce might have a chance, and not joking around. Trey Lamb, like he knows what he's doing. I don't know if Ryan Silverfield knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
Trey Land, the Undertaker, just like finishing off P4 coaches.
Before they even really are born.
Yeah. No, yeah, I don't want to touch this at all. I agree, yeah, this is a tough slog. 4.5 does seem a tad bit generous. Okay, North Alabama and okay, Tulsa. Where are the other three? Like, actually, like, this is clearly one of the bottom teams in the SEC. Are they better than three more of the SEC teams are playing? Not particularly. They're better than Utah.
No.
Also, no. So yeah, like they had a couple of close games last year. They had good offense, but they just had no defense at all, and that's not the issue. They lost most of their offense, and they're still picking the pieces on defense. So yeah, no, this is going to be full rebuild year, and yeah, I'm not touching this. I think minus 175 is a little too rich for my blood, but yeah, no, this isn't going to be a good team this year.
You can
Yeah,
get under 3.5 at plus 120.
look at that. I might do a
Yeah,
half
that's
and half there.
tempting. Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Take a
All
little
right.
bite of that. You got a 1-win cushion, even if they do upset somebody.
I'm not even worried about that. That's the thing. To your point about the 3.5. Yeah, because I was having
Yeah, it's
a
a
hard
2-10 ass team if I've ever seen one, man. It really
Yeah.
is. Actually, looking at DraftKings right now, you can bet Arkansas exactly 2 wins at plus 650.
That is
Ooh,
I
tempting.
am gonna grab a piece of that.
I like that.
Yeah,
Cool.
very fun.
Yeah. Saving the best for last in terms of the most fun to talk about in the juiciest content. As witnessed by the dick in the dirt comment. I love that. I'm putting that in my back pocket. All right. That brings us to our wrap up questions. An upset and who's playing for the conference title. You mentioned a couple of spots, Graham. Who are you selling on for your one upset involving an SEC team?
I here, you guys go first because I already gave you my Georgia Florida upset. So let me recap a little bit here
Okay.
while you go ahead and throw
Do
yours
you have
out.
one, Robert, or you want me to go?
I'll go Tennessee over Texas. That is an upset. I think it's a
God,
6.5.
yeah, I like that too. I actually had that written down as one. Since
Oh
you're going to do
wait,
that,
if you want Oklahoma as 6.5 point favorites, 6.5 point underdogs, so you can do that.
that's what I'm going to go with since you
Yeah,
stole
yeah.
mine. That was like my number two.
To be fair, those are I feel like those are very interchangeable. They're very interchangeable.
Like
Yeah, yeah, sure.
when we say upset, like we're talking just like any point spread underdog. Is that what
Yep.
we're
Yeah.
Or
talking?
I guess you want to say, hey, Phil's got Team B below Team A, so we'll count that as an upset too.
I understand. Okay, I am gonna go. I kind of like the scenario of I don't hate Mississippi State at LSU October
Wow.
17th coming off a bye. Kiffin is just so dependable and reliable at having 1 or 2 games a year against teams with bad records or losing records where they're a big favorite that they just overlook and don't get up for. And I think that Levy it has a good feel for him already
Yeah.
because he's been at Ole Miss and all that. That's really reaching, but even I would assume that Mississippi State would come into that game a 10 plus point underdog. I don't know if there's a line for that yet, but like I like the chances of them winning that game outright, but I definitely would like their odds of covering in that scenario.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. Bold and defensible. Robert, who plays for the conference title here?
I'll go a bit different. I think I'm gonna go Georgia and Tennessee.
Nice.
Wow.
I think I think I guess from what we've talked about, I think Georgia and Oklahoma are the favorites, but I'll go a bit different. I'll go Georgia Tennessee.
The two that you said are the favorites, Georgia and Oklahoma. I think, and I don't know, Graham, it sounds like you might be going the same way too. Your bullishness on the Sooners.
Yeah, I am. I'm Georgia, Oklahoma. I think that I have this weird hunch that Kirby Smart doesn't maybe want to win another SEC title. I think that getting confetti dumped on you on a stage before a 4 week layoff is an inherently bad thing to do for a team before a playoff. So I think Georgia beats Oklahoma in Athens in week 4 and then loses to Oklahoma and Atlanta. And then I think Georgia rebounds from that, gets to host a playoff game in Athens, and then gets hot and wins a few, maybe goes to the semis, and then once you get to that point, man, there's so many I'm not a big believer in being like, Georgia's who knows what the hell will happen at that point. But I think Georgia will end up being the team that advances the furthest in the
Yeah.
postseason out of this league this year, which they were not the last 2 years, despite the fact that they won the league. So I think that kind of the reverse happens, the inverse happens this time.
Maybe it's going to just take them out for a little trot rather than give them the full Kentucky Derby kind of run, right?
That's
In the
right.
conference.
They got whipped by Bama in the 2021 SEC title game, and then turned around and beat the crap out of Michigan in the Orange Bowl, and then beat
Yeah.
Bama in Indianapolis for the titles. They've got a good track record of if they can lose the SEC title and make a playoff, which they could not do for a while there. Now you can do that. Yeah, I just have a weird feeling that for one reason or another, maybe it's tiebreakers and stuff like that because this league is so big and there's 9 games now and there's so many different scenarios. But just have a feeling Georgia doesn't win an SEC title this year. It would be very historic for them to win 3 straight, though. It's rarely
Yeah.
been done.
Yep. No, I like your take there.
I
Solid.
actually I want to just add a quick point on that too, because you do raise a good point about the conference championship game. Because functionally, winning the Big Ten or the SEC gives you a first round bye, more or less. And I think that the other coach that I could see thinking along the same ways is actually Dan Lanning. They play Ohio State late in the year. If Oregon is undefeated and Ohio State is undefeated, if Dan Lanning might say, "Hey, you know what? Obviously, we'd love to win this game, but you know what? If we lose this game, then we're 11-1. We don't play in the Big Ten championship game, and we get to go play New Mexico or something round one, and then we're fresher for the." It sounds crazy, but like this is the thing, right? He in the first year of the CFP, they won the Big Ten, went to the Rose Bowl. They came out really
One
flat
seed.
against Ohio State. Yeah, the 1 seed. They came out against Ohio State, and now, to be fair, they probably shouldn't have had to play Ohio State, but they screwed up the bracket at that point. Then they patched the bracket for the next year. But then Oregon got to play James Madison, and then they got to play a Texas Tech team that had been basically was rusty. They crushed them. Now, okay, obviously it didn't end perfectly because they had to go play Indiana, but that consideration of, hey, you know what, do we really want to win a championship game? Because in actuality, do we want to not play football for a month?
Yeah.
That's a potential thing. That's something that I think is gonna people some of the coaches, like I'm sure
Yeah.
Dan Lanning is thinking about that, and I think Kirby Smart probably has. Potentially even Ryan Day. Maybe imagine that Oregon Ohio State game that like neither of us want to win this game. We both want to lose this game to not make the championship game. That how crazy would that be?
I
Well, we've
don't think
seen
it's outside the realm of possibility. I would say I am on board with the theory that having that bye in the first round is not great for most teams. I think if you're Georgia, yeah, like we just lost our center, our starting center. We'd love to go play Tulane at home and figure that out before we have to go face like a real team in a neutral site in New Orleans or something. But Indiana, like they had a bye, they won the Big Ten title and they beat the absolute crap out of Alabama. Maybe the truth is if you're that good, then you're that good.
Yeah.
And who cares? But yeah, we'll see.
Robert, we've actually seen a game like that where it seems like neither team wants to win it. It's called UTEP playing Sam Houston State. So don't pretend like we haven't seen that before. So
Hey man, nothing better than UTEP Sam Houston on a Friday night in November.
Graham, thank you so much for doing this. We really appreciate it hanging with us. Awesome takes. Very much appreciate it. We hope to see you before the playoffs when we can just go over 3 or 4 teams or 5 teams and not 16. So
Yeah.
thank you. Sir. Be well.
No,
Enjoy your
thanks for
season.
having me.
Best of luck with your Bulldogs.
Absolutely. Let me know if you guys are ever if you ever want to come out to Athens for a football game. You know how to find me.
Absolutely.
Sounds
Thank you, brother.
sounds good.